You're clean, aren't you? Except for your tower. You're a tower junkie, Roland.
Hello and welcome to Tower Junkies, presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. Tower Junkies is a podcast celebrating the work of Stephen King with a special focus on his magnum opus, the Dark Tower series, occasionally. We discuss the themes, characters, and mythology of the series in Palaver episodes, and review the books and comic series in Kef episodes. We also discuss non-Tower King novels, TV and film adaptations of King's work, eventually, and the latest news about all things that serve the king. You can find more of our work at TowerJunkiesPod.com and follow us on every level of social media at TowerJunkiesPod. I'm one of your hosts, Matt Hurt, and with me today, as usual, is Tiny.
Yellow.
Hi, Tiny.
Hey, buddy.
Today on the podcast, do you know what we're doing?
I do know what we're doing.
Do you want to announce it or should
Can I?
Yes, you can.
We're talking about Dr. Sleep, the novel. Finally.
Yes. Stephen King's 2013 sequel, Dr. Sleep, which enjoyed by both of our counts, a very good adaptation last year.
Very good.
By Mr. Mike Flanagan, who follows me on Twitter.
Yeah.
And
You've
replied...
directly interacted with him on Twitter.
I wasn't going to bring it up. But we are kind of buddies. I did try to slide into his DMs, and I've not gotten a response.
Well.
That's fine. But, that was a very delightful thing, because, we'll talk about that when we review the movie. But today we're talking about the book.
Yeah.
And before we do that, do we have any King... I have one piece of King news that I need to vamp for.
Okay.
He got Mr. Stephen King today, which this is going to come out probably in a few weeks from when we're recording. But he recently, as in today, or maybe it wasn't today. So yesterday, Stephen King was awarded, I believe, a Lifetime Achievement Award at the 2020 Audie Awards. The Audio Publishers Association's award. Okay. So it's for his audiobook work. Oh. Let me find where it is. Yes, he was given the APA's Lifetime Achievement Award. He was awarded it by his son, Joe Hill, who, Joe Hill, also won his own award for short stories and collections. Nice. Joe Hill said, quote, "His passion for audiobooks goes back decades. I know, I was there. In 47 West Broadway, Bangor, Maine, stories were always in the air and in the ear." Oh, that's nice.
Cool.
And King joked when he accepted the award. He said, quote, "It would make a hell of a murder weapon, wouldn't it?" And he went on to say, quote, "I listen to my own books. The reason why is because you can hear everything you did right and everything you did wrong. This is the most honorable form of storytelling there is."
Wow.
And I love audiobooks.
I know, they're great.
They are perfect.
Yeah.
And we can talk about that for just a second.
Well, that kind of segues into one of my check-ins.
Nice.
I had two King related. We have started listening to The Stand.
Yes.
And we're going to go a book at a time.
Yes.
Which is divided into 3 books, right?
Right. 3 books within the whole novel. So
within the novel, right.
Sections. Yeah.
Right. So I finished the first book, and so kind of waiting. And
for me to finish the first book so we can...
I didn't want to come out and say it out loud, but fuck yeah.
Right. Well, those episodes that we're going to record in advance aren't going to come out until later in the year.
Right.
So do you want to just briefly, just say, how do you feel about book 1?
Oh,
just really briefly.
It's truly a setup, because this is like this is at least my 3rd time through the book.
Nice.
If it might be my 4th, I can't even remember. Okay. It's my first time with audiobook.
March the 4th be with you.
Yes. It's super long for those who are unaware. And I kind of forgot how much the first book is truly just set up, really introducing the characters and world building and kind of getting through the plague. Because I have a good memory of what happens, obviously. Right. And I was like, oh wow, so that's what the first book is. Kind of when we came to the end, I was like, interesting. That's I love when things are structured so well.
Yeah.
And it's structured super well with The Stand. So
super flew well.
Super flew, yeah. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm over halfway through book 1 of that.
Yeah. For the segue purpose,
nice.
While I'm waiting for you to catch up, I started listening to Frank Herbert's Dune. On audiobook.
Interesting.
Yeah, because I'm like super freaking amped for Denis Villeneuve's interpretation, which is coming out in December of 2020. I think it was supposed to be like a summer movie, but it got pushed.
Oh, really?
Which is a bummer, but I gotta wait till the end of the year, but I don't care.
Right.
Because the casting is just out of this world for that movie, and Denis Villeneuve is a dream director, writer for it. Just so excited. And I've read the book before. The reason why I love listening to the audiobook now is that, there's like made up languages and names for things. And like I read the physical book the first time I read Dune, and there's all this crazy ass language in it. Like, there's this like almost cult like sect where they train women to be concubines, and they're called the Bene Gesserit.
Okay.
And like if you see it written down, you have no idea that's how it's pronounced. Yeah. And like there's like this Messiah type character that's in the lore of the universe, and it's called the Kwisatz Haderach.
Wow.
Yeah, I was like, and like there's like Q's and X's in there, and like when I read it, I was like, I'm just gonna call it the Q because what the fuck. I knew how it was pronounced because of the movie, because David Lynch's movie that came out in the 80s. But if you had just been reading the book, that movie came out in the 80s and the book was written in the 60s. So for 20 years, there were probably people like the Kwisatz or whatever, calling it the completely wrong thing. But it's really cool to have like, I can't remember the guy who's reading it. I can't remember what his name is, the actor, but he's like a kind of a posh-ish British man.
Nice.
And so he's got this great voice, and it's kind of just cool to hear all these cool terms that are basically gibberish.
Right.
Just to actually hear someone speak them.
Nice.
That's one of the beautiful things about audiobooks.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Long way to get to that point, but yeah, that's what I was trying to get to.
Nice. Yeah, I should really listen to Dune.
Oh, man, it's good.
Yeah.
It's good.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I'm already thinking I'm probably going to get... I haven't looked yet, but I'm hoping that the sequel books are all on Audible. I hope they're recordings of them, because I
believe that at least several of them are.
Okay. Because I haven't read any of those. So
yeah.
I've only read the first one.
Yeah. I think the second one's Dune Messiah, I think.
That sounds right.
Yeah, it's really confusing, because like when you go to Audible, it says like series Dune Saga, book 13 for Dune Messiah.
Jeez.
But Dune is book 2. Like it's like book 2... It's listed as book 2 when it says Dune instead of Dune Saga. So
yeah, I usually just go to the Wikipedia for the chronology.
Yeah. Looks like there are 6 Dune books on Audible.
I think that's all there are.
Yeah.
For the actual true Herbert, there may be some other author who's gotten into the universe, but as far as I know, there's 5 or 6 books. So
yeah, those are all by Frank Herbert. So
okay,
I want to say his son wrote some.
Oh, really? I didn't realize I thought Frank Herbert only wrote like 2 or 3, and then his son wrote like 4.
Not according to this guy here on Audible.
Okay.
Yeah, Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson wrote several.
Okay.
So like there's a lot.
Really? Okay, I didn't realize it was that extensive.
Yeah.
I've heard some of the sequels are like just as good as the first. So.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice. That's going to be interesting when that movie comes out.
My dad's read them all several times.
Nice.
Big sci-fi fan, so.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, those are my check-ins.
Sweet.
Yeah.
And you've watched The Outsider.
Been watching The Outsider. Yeah, it's going great.
Nice.
I'm really digging it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Check-ins for me, just chapter like 25 of The Stand, loving it. I had a couple of long drives, like 4-hour drives, a couple weeks ago, and got a lot of listening done.
Nice.
So just I love audiobooks for that purpose.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. I also listened to, on like not that same trip, but like recently, I drove that same distance. I listened to Revival. Did I talk about this on the podcast?
I don't think so.
No, I listened to Revival. It's very interesting, very good. I really enjoyed it, and I thought that it was really cool as in some cases, it's kind of an interesting companion to Salem's Lot in a sense.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is that Salem's Lot is a love letter and a kind of an interpretation of Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Right.
And it's heavily influenced by that and everything. It's patterned by that. Revival, not to such an extent as that, is kind of an homage and inspired by Mary Shelley's Frankenstein.
Okay.
And it was really interesting for me to listen to Revival as I'm going through the Universal Monsters collection on Blu-ray. And it was really interesting. And, like, there's such a cool reference to Mary Shelley. Like, he name drops her, pays homage to her in the form of a name in the book.
Okay.
It's a good book. I liked it.
Sweet.
And eventually we'll cover it.
Yeah.
So shall we talk about Dr. Sleep?
Let's.
Yes. So at long last, last week or maybe earlier this week, you guys heard our review of the Shining miniseries. That I hope is still good audio. I have not edited it yet because I am a shithead. Anyway, so that is coming, or that has come, and now we are at Dr. Sleep, the novel.
Yeah.
Tiny.
Sir.
What is your history with Dr. Sleep from when it was announced or when it came out in 2013 to when you first read it like a decade ago?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
to clarify, you first read it like a few months ago.
I first read it, this in 2019.
Yeah.
Some point in 2019.
When did we read? We read it, it was like early fall, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
but
what's your history?
So I remember when the book was announced and everything, I wasn't, for whatever reason, I wasn't that excited about it. And by all rights, I should have been. But I wasn't that into it. I waited 6 years to read the book. I don't know why. So yeah, I don't have much of a history with it at all. But since we started the podcast and really in 2019, I had a huge resurgence of Shining fandom from reading the book for the second time 20 years after I read it for the first time.
Right.
And just falling in love with that book all over again, and the Torrance family especially. And then watching Stanley Kubrick's movie and just 2019's like, as far as like adaptations and pop culture relevance of Stephen King, 2019 is like the biggest year he's ever had, probably.
Right.
I mean, as far as like cultural relevance and just adaptations and being in the ether, if you will. So just all that blended together was like the perfect environment to read Dr. Sleep, I think.
Yeah.
And I've read it twice now. I wanted to read it again before the movie came out, which I did. So I've read it twice, and if you go to Obsessive Viewer podcast, you can listen to our year in review episode where I placed the movie at number 3 on my list.
Nice. Absolutely
Absolutely adored the movie. So yeah, it was just a big year for King, and Dr. Sleep was a huge part of that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Sweet. Yeah, I was the same way. I procrastinated reading it when it came out. Like, I think I shared this anecdote on another episode, but like last fall on Facebook, I went through my Facebook memories, and in like 2013, I had posted something on my Facebook timeline that was like an article about all the international cover art for the upcoming Dr. Sleep, the upcoming Shining sequel from Stephen King. And my post on Facebook was, I can't wait to read this. And that was 2013. Fast forward 6 years, I finally listened to it on Audible. And that, I think one of the reasons why I wasn't as... I don't know if I'd say I wasn't drawn to it, but one of the reasons why I didn't prioritize reading it when it first came out in 2013 is because maybe, and this is 2013, I was an idiot. I was slightly more of an idiot than I am now. In 2013, it was just like, oh, a sequel to The Shining, that's awesome. And then I read the plot summary, and it's like, adult Dan Torrance helps people die in a hospice center and is hunted by vampires.
Yeah.
Okay. But there's no hotel. Okay. But room 217. No. Oh, Okay.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of, I don't know, because you hear a sequel to The Shining, it's like, oh, he goes back to the Overlook, which technically he does.
Right.
But it didn't feel like a sequel to The Shining in terms of the plot.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, I think part of my hesitation was I think I was misinformed by someone about what the book was about. I knew it was a sequel to The Shining, but I didn't know it was like it followed Daniel Torrance. Like I didn't realize that Danny Torrance. I thought it was. I didn't think the Torrances were in it at all.
Okay,
and so that's part of why I don't think I was especially enthusiastic about
Interesting.
it. But if I had known it was like it followed Danny Torrance, I'd have been like, oh, okay, I'd be much more interested in it. Probably would have read it sooner, but
interesting.
Yeah.
So you've read it twice.
I have.
Will Patton does the narration.
Yes.
Fantastic job as always.
Absolutely.
He's really good.
Yep.
So I'm going to read the plot summary actually.
Okay.
And then we can go into non-spoiler and then spoiler.
Okay.
All right. So the plot summary, courtesy of StephenKing.com, is as follows. On highways across America, a tribe of people called the True Knot travel in search of sustenance. They look harmless, mostly old, lots of polyester, and married to their RVs. But as Dan Torrance knows and Tween Aberstone learns, the True Knot are quasi-immortal, living off the steam that children with the Shining produce when they are slowly tortured to death. Haunted by the inhabitants of the Overlook Hotel, where he spent one horrific childhood year, Dan has been drifting for decades, desperate to shed his father's legacy of despair, alcoholism, and violence. Finally, he settles in a New Hampshire town, an AA community that sustains him, and a job at a nursing home where his remnant Shining power provides the crucial final comfort to the dying. Aided by a prescient cat, he becomes Dr. Sleep. And that's all I'll read of the plot summary. Published September 24th, 2013. And, yeah, that's about all I got for that. So, So Tiny, non-spoilers. What did you think of the novel, Dr. Sleep?
I really, really loved it. Immediately after I finished it the first time, I was like, this is a top 5 King book.
Oh, sweet.
Like, that's how much I enjoyed it. I just told the sort of anecdote about how I didn't even realize it was about Danny Torrance. I didn't realize, even if I had known that back in 2013, I didn't know how much I wanted to know what happened to Danny Torrance. I wasn't prepared for how enthralled I was going to be to revisit his character and to see what he became as a man and how, not necessarily a spoiler alert, just to be how disappointing he kind of became as an adult, and just what he fell into. I loved the choices that King made for his character, and just that alone was enough for it to be a great book. But then you weave in this super, like, scary and disturbing plot of these True Knot villains just blend beautifully into the story, and with the characters and to the whole universe of The Shining. It was just a fantastic sequel. And again, not a spoiler, but I'm super satisfied. I kind of hope this is the last time that Stephen King writes about the Torrances. Yeah, I mean, because I was so satisfied with where he took it and what he did with the characters that, I mean, I don't really want any more. There's nothing else that I want from the Torrance family. I'd rather just let them be where they ended with this book, if that makes sense.
I definitely agree. I did have some, I had some questionable, not issues with some of the things, but there were a couple things we'll talk about in spoilers that I was like, really? Like I was just like, this is happening? All right, fine. But for the most part, yeah, I'm on the same page. I really was enthralled by this book, not necessarily so much because, it's Dan Torrance, although that was a big part of it, but mostly because I was so interested in the concept of the True Knot and the way those characters are depicted as villains. I mean, they're villains, they're evil characters, but the reasoning behind them and their quest and everything is really interesting in terms of the moral gray area. I don't know if I'd say moral gray area, but like the logic behind they're not pure evil characters. Like they're not. I mean, they're evil, but they're not like evil for the sake of evil. They have an arc to them. I'll talk more about that in spoilers.
Yeah,
but yeah, I was very engaged with the plot. And I was really interested in learning more about adult Dan Torrance. And what I found fascinating about the book is that it's this, and again, I'll talk more in spoilers, or I guess I can talk about this non-spoilers, but it is, I think what I kind of said about the miniseries. It's been so long since we recorded that episode. But what's interesting is that it's an extension of what he did in the miniseries in the 90s. And what I mean by that is that in the miniseries, he changed the story to incorporate Jack Torrance being in AA. And the reason that he did that is because he himself found AA and got sober. That was, if I'm understanding correctly, I believe that King got sober around the late 80s. So when he wrote the miniseries, he put AA into the plot. And I thought that was an interesting evolution of this story. And one of the things that I find just fascinating about Stephen King's career is that The Shining, in addition to being one of the like big focal points in a pop culture sense, is that it has this weird trajectory throughout his entire career that it grows with him in ways that both accentuate his life and his like where he is at a certain time in his life, I presume, and also it has adverse effects, like with the Kubrick adaptation and everything. And it's so interesting to see the story of the Torrance family and the story of The Shining and Dr. Sleep play out across all of these different iterations and mediums and everything, and reflect Stephen King in specific ways. And Dr. Sleep, the novel, is no different to that, because it is very much steeped in Alcoholics Anonymous. And despite it being anonymous, Stephen King is, he has experience with that and everything. And it's just very interesting to see him take a character that was a child when he wrote him in the 70s and create an adult version of that character that has both the demons of his father, of the character's father, and demons of Stephen King's own history. And fusing that with this discovery of Alcoholics Anonymous and incorporating his own, I don't think it's too strong to say his salvation into the story of Dan Torrance. I just think that's all of that is just really fascinating to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I was really engaged with that. And then, some cool Shining stuff and cool Psychic Kid stuff. So you said that it's going to be, that it's like a top 5 King book.
Yeah.
We do, if you remember, we have a running list of our top 19 Stephen King books. I just discreetly sent you a message that it was a screenshot of our current top 19s. So where does it land? Should we wait until after the spoiler discussion?
I'm fine throwing it in right here.
And then we'll go to spoilers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me think here.
I'm going to cheat and go to my actual ranking to find mine. And remember, whatever you pick, it knocks out number 19.
Right.
Which for you, for you it's The Wastelands.
Yeah, that's rough.
Ooh. Wow, and 11/22/63 is 18.
It is. It is 18th, yeah.
That's something.
Yeah, I didn't. That's like your. Yeah, I was gonna say that's like your number one.
Yeah.
I didn't love it as much as you did. I definitely like that book a lot.
Then again, I think with your list, I think it was more. I think it was more loose. Like
it is. I know for a fact. Yeah, like my top 3 to 5 is like pretty locked, but everything else is sort of fall where it might. You know.
Just for our listeners, what are your top?
My top five. Five right now is Drawing of the Three, Dark Tower, Book 2, The Shining at number 4, The Stand at number 3, Misery at 2, and The Dark Tower, Book 7 at number 1 is my favorite. So I'd probably put Dr. Sleep in at number 5.
Okay.
And drop down the Drawing of the Three out of the top 5. But I'd probably bump like Salem's Lot.
Okay.
Honestly, or maybe like Mr. Mercedes. I'd have to think about what to bump. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like the bottom 14 or so are just kind of interchangeable, really. I mean,
that's fair.
That's kind of how I kind of do that with my list sometimes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially with a list that's always changing like this.
Yeah.
So. And
like with me, my list is not even the updated list from that because I included Revival into it. So
okay.
For me, Dr. Sleep is number 16. And Revival is actually number 17.
Okay.
So, like, my 15th to 19 is The Gunslinger, Dr. Sleep, The Gunslinger at 15, Dr. Sleep at 16, Revival at 17, Mr. Mercedes at 18, and Salem's Lot at number 19.
Okay.
So, yeah, we'll revisit this as we go along with this podcast.
Yeah.
So we're going to go into spoilers for Dr. Sleep, the novel. We both liked it, so we're going to heap praise upon it.
Yep.
So if you haven't read Dr. Sleep and you don't want to be spoiled, go ahead and turn this off or come back. Oh my God. Okay, spoilers on for Dr. Sleep. Okay, so spoilers on for Dr. Sleep, the novel.
Yeesh.
So Tiny, there's a lot of stuff to go through, and I don't think we really have a lot of time. I kind of want to get this. I kind of want to get us done soon. So
yeah.
So, where to start? So we didn't really go into many specifics in the non-spoiler.
Yeah, like any.
Yeah, at all. So we're kind of freeballing in here. So let's talk about the relationship of Dan and Abra. Mm-hmm. Let me start by just saying the thing that I always forget, because thankfully it wasn't included in the movie. The familial relation between Dan and Abra. Yeah. Dan is literally her uncle because Jack Torrance had an affair and birthed Abra's mother? Right?
Grandmother? Mother,
yeah.
He had an affair with her grandmother.
Yes, there you go.
That's yeah.
So, yeah. So how did you feel about that? Because it's treated as this big surprise late in the novel. How did you feel about that plot element of the story?
I didn't dislike it, but I feel like it was entirely unnecessary.
I agree.
Because I think it's never established anywhere in the oeuvre of The Shining that the shine, the ability of the shine is like hereditary necessarily. Right. Like typically it's kind of in the family, but like neither Wendy nor Jack Torrance had the shine.
Right.
And as far as Danny Torrance knows, none of the other people in his family had the shining.
Right.
If I recall correctly.
That's correct. And and there is precedent for like a familial, like hereditary thing.
With Dick Halloran. Right.
But honestly, okay, so this is how I feel about it. And this is going to drag down a certain beloved franchise that has already been dragged down a lot. Maybe even from the beginning. Star Wars.
Yeah.
One of the things that I don't like Star Wars. I'm just going to come out and say it. I'm not a fan of Star Wars.
We know.
Yes. Obsessiveviewer.com and all the death threats I get. So I don't like Star Wars. And one of the reasons why I don't like Star Wars and one of the reasons why I don't like The Rise of Skywalker and I love The Last Jedi is because so much of Star Wars is like, oh, a family thing. It's the Skywalker saga. It's like you're birthed in, like, it's your birthright to be a Jedi and everything. And I'm like, it's unnecessary. Like, you don't need a monarchy or whatever. You don't need royalty and everything. And that's why I love The Last Jedi. Having Abra be, like, a blood relative of Dan Torrance, like you said, it feels completely superfluous. Like, completely unnecessary. And I would say that it borderline detracts from the overall story, because the idea of the True Knot is that they are traveling the world or traveling the country looking for people who shine.
Right.
And it's like just the idea that anyone can shine and anyone can be on their radar for sustenance is a scary thought. And just having like the connection be a familial one is just, I don't know.
It's entirely unnecessary. And plus the ability of the shine is such a strong connection between two characters anyways.
Yeah.
As evidenced by the first book between Dick Halloran and Danny Torrance.
Yeah.
You know, these people who are, I mean, culturally, ethnically, age-wise,
generationally,
completely different people.
Oh, totally.
Have this, like, almost a familial link because they're so close, because they share something that's so unique, and that could have been just as well established between Danny and Abra without the hereditary, the familial link, like you were saying.
This is probably for later in this episode, but like, it would be really cool. I don't know if he would be able to pull it off, but like in theory, it would be really cool if there was a third book where it's Abra as an adult who is like, she's finding, like, there's another like nefarious group of like villains who are seeking out people who shine, and she has to like band together some of the people that shine and have like a Dream Warriors type of like final fight and everything. I don't know, but anyway, so the familial link didn't do anything for me either. I did like how it tied into, like is a strong word. I thought it was kind of interesting how the way it's like hinted at and then revealed is that she like rubs her lips or dry rubs her mouth,
right?
Like Jack did, which also feels a little pointless. Because the reason that he did that Jack did that was the alcoholism,
right? And she also has like a temper.
Yeah, that's true.
She can get set off really quick. Which is one of the things I loved about the movie. We're not talking about the movie.
Right, yeah. That's for another 4 months.
Yeah. But yeah, I thought the familiar thing was just an unnecessary part of the story, but I don't... I kind of agree with what you said, that it borderline detracted from it a little bit, but it didn't bother me too much. Okay. I just thought it was unnecessary.
Sure. Yeah. So let's walk it back a little bit and talk about the beginning. When we're introduced to Abra, there is something that Stephen King did that I thought was really interesting and really kind of clever, but I want to have a dialogue with you about it because I'm curious if there's an ickiness to it. Okay. Abra's like the first indicator that she can shine. She is a toddler, I think. She's a very small child, and she has. She basically predicts 9/11. Yeah. And the way it unfolds is so like, I was listening to it on Audible and I'm like, this is really like, this is good writing. This is a good piece of writing from King, because it's just gradually like I can't remember specifically if she like put an image of a number in her mother's head or her mother dreamed about something because Abra, I don't know. But it's like the number of one of the flights. And like, it's a completely innocuous number. And like, when you're listening to it or reading it, you're like, I don't know how this connects. And then they're at the hospital because Abra had like a seizure or something. And then like, there's like little things here and there that's like, oh yeah, the doctor isn't in yet because, it's early in the morning. And then like, Abra's dad like looks around and he's like, well, it's a pretty empty hospital waiting area because it's an early Tuesday morning. And then it's like, it comes to fruition and it's like, oh, it's 9/11. And it's just like, there's something to the reveal of it being 9/11 that kind of really worked for me. And I want to get your read on that, but I want to share an anecdote real quick. Okay. I was driving with my nephews and my sister the other day, and we were passing by the airport, and two things happened. One is like, one was that my nephew Landon, who is a certain age, he's like 6 or 7. He, like, there were planes taking off and landing by the airport, and like, Landon sees one that's making its descent toward the airport, and he says, just completely calmly, without any indication that he has any awareness of what this phrasing means, but he meant it as like, he meant it a certain way, but he's like, that plane's going down. I was I almost screamed with laughter. Because it was so, it's like the classic, like, this is kind of a creepy kid thing.
Yeah.
And he was just like, yeah, the plane is going down. And he just meant, the plane is making its descent.
Right.
And then my sister had to be like, Landon, just it's landing. It's landing.
Don't
like
say it that way.
Don't say it like that. But then, the reason that I say this, before that, they had seen planes taking off, and they're like, oh, wow, we've never seen a plane take off. And so Landon's kind of creepy. I'm going to go ahead and say that. I'm sorry, Landon, in the future, if you're listening to this, but you were a creepy kid. So, I love you, though. But Landon was like, I've never been on a plane. And Gavin, my other nephew, was like, I've never been on a plane either. Gatlin, if you're listening to this in the future, you haven't been born yet. So anyway, so they're like, yeah, we haven't been on a plane before. And then Landon is like, I'm scared to go on a plane because they crash.
Oh my God.
Like, morbid kid, man.
Jeez.
And then Gavin said, I'm scared to go on a plane because of 1911.
Oh my God.
And I was like, oh, kids are something.
Say the darndest things.
They sure do.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I woke up in the middle of the night and Landon was just standing in front of, like, standing beside my bed. I don't know how he got in my apartment. He's just like, the plane is going down.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So,
That's
anyway,
lovely.
Yeah. So what did you think of the 9/11 stuff in Dr. Sleep?
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty cool way to introduce her shine, and how it's alluded to throughout the book that Abra is particularly strong. Like, she's, I mean, in the universe of The Shining that Stephen King has created, she's probably the most powerful shiner that we've known. And so I love how it was demonstrated that she's like a baby. Like, she can't talk yet. Like, that's how young she is.
I believe so.
She's like basically almost not an infant, but like, in diapers, not walking yet. I think she's that young, and has that much of an emotional connection to all those people. It was a really cool way to demonstrate it. And her power was alluded to again very effectively. I think her birthday party, she was like 5 or something.
I think something
maybe
like
even
that. Yeah.
Younger than that. And there's a thing where she did something with the spoons, like sticking in the ceiling or something like that.
Yeah, you may be conflating it with the movie.
Okay.
But it's something with the spoons in the book, I think.
Right, yeah. But anyways, like, those were both very effective and like set the stage pretty well for her mysticism or her importance, I guess.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a bit of a prologue, and we'll talk briefly about this. Was that your foot?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. They're fine. So we'll talk briefly about this, but there's a bit of a prologue with Danny and Wendy post the Overlook.
Yes.
And Danny finds the woman from room 217 in the bathtub of the place that they're staying and everything. Dick comes to, like, help him out and everything.
Yeah.
I got such a vibe off of that of... I had this weird sensation that they were going to kill off Wendy and Dick.
Yeah.
At that moment, that didn't happen, but I just got that sense, like that sense of foreboding out of that. How'd you feel about that prologue thing and the concept of the lockbox that Dick gives to Danny?
Really, the lockbox thing was super brilliant.
Yeah,
and I loved the way it was used later on in the book, and it's just such a cool concept. just again high concept thinking from King, great writing. And then the whole prologue I really enjoyed as well. Just I was like flooded with nostalgia.
Yeah.
Just being with those characters again in the like 70s or so when that book took place. Just super effective, and it was nice to sort of be with the character of Dick Halloran again. It was great. I think the one sort of shortcoming of the book, or I don't know if it's a shortcoming, but one area that I kind of wish would have been more expansive or respective would have been the character of Wendy. She's barely in the book, really. And I feel like one of my favorite things about revisiting The Shining last year was that I forgot how great of a character she is and how relevant she is to the story. And she's this very savior-like character, and keeps her head amongst all this incredibly disturbed man and this very confused and terrified young boy. She's kind of a rock, and I loved her character, and I kind of that didn't sink in with me the first time I read it as a 12-year-old.
Sure.
Obviously. And so I really loved her character, and I kind of wish she would have had a better ending, sort of. Yeah. If she had to be in this book.
It kind of just glosses over it.
Yeah.
Like her and Dick. Like, it's like, oh, they're dead now, which is expected because, they're old.
Right.
But it's just like, I kind of felt like they're such important figures in Dan's life that I feel like they should have had more of a moment.
And such great characters.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
But
I also loved, to kind of allude to the whole lockbox concept, Dick Halloran's story about his grandfather. Is that who he was?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, his grandfather and his abuse and just literal sadism and torture of him, and then the story of his grandfather's ghost. That was fucking scary.
Terrifying.
I was like, it was super effective.
Yeah, and at the concept level, even.
Yeah.
Like, just like the idea that, like, your tormentors are still around.
Right.
Like, they won't leave.
Can't get rid of them.
Yeah, like, that is something that's so just, like, ripe for just plotting.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I thought it was done very well in that section of the book.
Absolutely. I love that. So I mean, that's the first, hour and a half, 2 hours of the book, or, the first handful of chapters. And I was like, I'm already like hook, line, sinker in this book. This is awesome. Yeah. I'm so happy to be back here. So it was a great way to start the book.
Totally. And so we get Dan as an adult. He has alcohol problems and everything. And kind of his big, something happens to him early in the book. He gets into a fight. He goes home with a woman, and he steals money from her. After they snorted a bunch of coke and everything. Yeah. And he steals the money knowing that she has a child. And it's such an interesting thing, because you have, this is a transgression of the character that is haunting him just as much as the Overlook, like, ghosts are. Right. It's a specter throughout the book. And it's like, at times he has to, like, resolve that within himself. And it's really interesting. And I think that, getting ahead to the next episode, like, the movie depicts this beautifully. Yes. Just so good. But I really like the way that it kind of comes into play as something that he's working through, and something that he's afraid of, and, like, to bring up in AA and everything. It links into his Alcoholics Anonymous storyline, and that's something I find very just interesting, and it's a good way to show, like, just how vulnerable, and I don't want to say not ready, but, like, how vulnerable and unsure of himself and unconfident he is in his ability to work through his abuse issues and everything. So I thought it was very evocative. Totally. Yeah. So moving right along, let's talk about the True Knot. Yes. Trying to do a Mordred thing. True Not a hungry.
Yeah.
So I love the True Knot, man.
Yeah. Such a cool villain.
Such a cool, like, concept. And what I appreciate about them is that they're not, as I kind of alluded to in a very slap together way in the non-spoiler, they are not evil for the sake of evil. They are not the Crimson King that wants to topple the tower to reign over nothing.
There's like a survival aspect.
There's such a survival aspect.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, I mean, there was, like, a survival aspect to, like, Pennywise and other, like, villains in King's, like, oeuvre. But here it just seems like this is their primary focus. Like, they are evil because they don't have a problem with destroying the lives of children and killing people so that they can subsist on their steam.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that the reason that they do that is so that they will survive is such an interesting concept, and so there's so many layers to it. So how did you feel about the True Knot and their motivation throughout the story?
All what you said, and then especially I loved that it really expanded the how dynamic the concept of The Shining is.
Yeah.
And how, because, you know, in the first book and everything, it's an established thing, and we know that there are multiple people out there who have it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a phenomenon, but the fact that it's prevalent to the point that it has a villain is so cool. And just like, I just love the level that he took it, that Stephen King took it to.
Yeah.
That's how much he expanded the universe of The Shining and the ability of The Shine to where it has a villain, and that there are people who seek it out and seek it out in a really disturbing, evil way.
Yes.
I really loved it. And I always loved the concept of like deep time and like a character who experiences deep time.
Like you mean like kind of
immortality.
Okay.
Like in, I thought, some of the characters like in Lost, not to spoil Lost, but like, you know, like immortality is just a really cool concept. It can be kind of dumb and like not used to great effect, but I just think it's...
same thought, like, sorry to interrupt, but
No,
I
you're
had the
cool.
same thought about 1,200 years ago. I thought that same thing.
You're hilarious.
So yeah, thank you. Anyway,
but I just...
totally worth interrupting you.
Yeah. I love that, like, Rose the Hat, like she started out like in Ireland, and like she has like an Irish accent, and then, you know, she has this gypsy, like, Irish gypsy quality to her. And that's a very old concept, but sort of established. Like, I understood the reference of it, but, yeah, like, she's so old that she...
How old is she?
Yeah. I don't know. It's just, I just think that's a cool... I just dig that.
Yeah.
Whenever that, I don't know.
It's an interesting concept, like playing with that whole idea of like, oh, these people have immortality or something relative to that, but like at what cost?
Right.
How much of what do they do to achieve that and subsist and everything?
Right. That's one of the cooler parts of immortality, is that there's usually some astronomical cost that makes it not worth it.
Let me tell you about the last 500 years. Anyway, I was really fascinated by the True Knot.
Yeah.
Just as character, like their dynamic and the kind of the closeness of like the kind of tribal, like,
yeah.
I don't want to say cultish behavior, but like
ritualistic.
Ritualistic. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah. Just that it's just so, it feels like this is a small community of like a lived-in community of people. Yeah. Nomadic people.
I think one of the coolest...
creatures.
Yeah. One of the coolest lines that's used in two different contexts is when... gosh, I can't remember the character's name. The snake.
Snakebite Andy?
Snakebite Andy. When they turn her... and she kind of comes around and she's like, "Am I still human?" And Rose the Hat says, "Do you care?"
Yeah, that's right.
And then Dick Halloran kind of says the same thing with, you know, when Danny asks him, when I put those ghosts or entities into the lockbox. Are they still alive in there? And he says, "Do you care?" Such a cool,
so good
juxtaposition and a fun use of that phrase in two different contexts. It was, again, just great writing.
Totally, absolutely,
yeah.
So Dan's time in Teeny Town and that whole thing, like I love this, and I've always loved this about King's writing. This idea of just this found home, like finding your people and finding your quartet anywhere you can. And he just kind of stumbles into this town, and he makes friends with, I think in the book he makes friends with 2 different people. But
yes.
In the movie it economizes into Cliff Curtis's character.
Yeah.
But it's so just rich to me. And like AA is a big part of that. And I like the way it's connected to Abra in terms of the doctor and everything. It's all a bunch of cool stuff that I don't know if we really have much to comment on about it.
Right. Well, it's also just great to see for his character, because Danny Torrance has been through so much hell that I think in that town he truly like found happiness and a purpose and all that, and just in respect to his character was really satisfying.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So the Overlook. We can should we start wrapping up?
Yeah, we can skip ahead.
Okay, so the Overlook. When it's I don't want to say revealed or anything, but like we eventually get to the end game of it is they're going to the site of the Overlook, and obviously the Overlook is burned down, so it's just like an empty lot or something. How did you feel about the showdown between Dan and the True Knot? And how the climax of the story played out.
I was a fan. I think it was there were very high stakes, and I loved not that you necessarily empathize with or sympathize with the True Knot, but you really detect and I guess relate to their desperation.
Yeah.
In that moment, that like they're grasping at straws to the point where Rose the Hat thinks that she can kind of turn Abra into this like a cow almost, where she can like slowly over time, milk Abra for steam, and instead of hunting down and gathering these little bits of steam here and there, like
it's just an interesting survival aspect,
right? And so many of the True Knot have died, and they're infected, and they're just desperate and really grasping at straws. And when characters like that are desperate, it's dangerous, and you really feel the danger and the evil culminating in that climax of the story. And, I really dug the way that it was so cerebral, where like Danny and Abra were sort of, projecting themselves and like going inside their minds and opening lockboxes and shit like that. Just super. That's hard. It was sort of hard to envision, I guess, as the reader trying to picture all that. But I think just the concepts of it translated pretty well.
Yeah.
And I was able to understand what was going on, but have a decent picture of what was happening. Right.
And it's interesting that it's kind of, I don't want to say a riff on, but like it's somewhat similar in theory to kind of how the final showdown with Pennywise in the book kind of goes down with Bill and it kind of doing this kind of cerebral, like metaphysical kind of battle of wills.
Yeah, LSD trip, basically.
Pretty much, yeah. So it's interesting that King kind of returned to that well.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so obviously, Danny wins.
Yeah.
Everything turns out okay. How do you feel about the ending of the book?
Yeah, I liked it. I think it was conclusive, and I want this to be the last time that King writes about the Torrances. And honestly, I think it'd be kind of fun if there's sort of some Easter eggy references to The Shine. In the Dark Tower, Jake has The Shining, basically, but it's not called that.
Oh, yes.
Like
You were talking about the books.
The books.
Okay.
Yeah, the books.
Yeah.
No one ever calls it The Shining in the Dark Tower, do they?
I don't believe so. I really don't. Yeah.
I don't think that. But
it's called The Touch in the book.
The Touch. Yeah. That's right. That's what he calls it.
Yeah.
But that's what it is. He has The Shining. I mean, that's basically what it is.
Yeah.
And I think that's fun if that's interjected in other parts of King's universe. That's cool. But I don't ever care to visit the Overlook again, or the Torrance family, or Danny, or even Abra. I mean, as great of a character as she was, is. It was conclusive, and I'm totally happy with that.
What if from now on, every King book that he writes, it's revealed at the end of each book that the protagonist of said book was secretly the descendant of Jack Torrance.
God.
And by the end of King's career, you have just a family tree of Jack Torrance banging co-eds.
Oh my God.
Throughout the 70s.
Oh, jeez.
You could have a very that's the King universe there.
Oh my God.
I liked the ending too. I thought the final confrontation was really well done. There's a moment where he's either stabbing himself or cutting himself by the will of Rose the Hat.
Right.
Or she's trying to compel him to cut Abra.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting dynamic that clearly is interesting because I remember it so clearly. But it was a really intense
definitely
ending. One big thing. I know we probably missed a ton of stuff. I'm so sorry for that. We'll look forward to the movie review.
Yeah.
But Dark Tower reference. Oh, before we get to the Dark Tower reference, let's talk about the secret, or not secret, but the real star of the story. Azrael,
God.
the cat. Azzy.
Yeah.
Good kitty or bad kitty?
Who cares?
Let's take that again. Good kitty or bad kitty?
Obviously a good kitty.
Good kitty, yes. Yeah. Yes. Sorry you had to hear that, Pizza. Official mascot of Obsessive Viewer Podcast. But the Dark Tower reference, do you remember what it was?
I don't think I do, actually.
There's a moment late in the book where Dan says, I don't remember the exact context, but he just says, there are other worlds than these.
Oh, man, I forgot about that.
And I was like, man, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. So, yeah, I guess that's about it, because we're running low on time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so final thoughts. It's your number, what, 5?
I think I put it at number 5.
Number 5? Okay. Yeah. I had it at number 16, I believe.
Okay.
Check the show notes for our current top 19 Stephen King novels.
Yeesh.
So Tiny, that's it for Dr. Sleep.
Yeah.
Overall thoughts for me, I loved it as well. Is it a book that you'll revisit?
I've listened to it twice. I don't know. At some point I probably will, but there's just so much other stuff I want to read. There
really is.
Yeah.
So next time on the podcast, we're going to talk about Dr. Sleep, the 2019 adaptation from Mike Flanagan. Friend of the show, Mike Flanagan. Check your DMs. But he's not going to. Anyway, Dr. Sleep, the movie, really excited to talk to you about it. And then, I think after that, we're going to do Doomickey finally. And then we're going to tackle Castle Rock Season 2. Castle Rock. And I'm really excited because if I can pull this off, I haven't been able to pull it off yet, but I have a goal that intermittently throughout the year, and I'm saying this in March, so grain of salt, I want to release commentary tracks as podcast episodes for Stephen King adaptations.
Okay.
So I have every intention of dragging you into them, Tiny. We'll work it out. I think the first one will likely come out early next month in April 2020. So look forward to that. In the meantime, check out our other shows, Obsessive Viewer Podcast and Anthology. Anthology is about the Twilight Zone. Obsessive Viewer is about whatever I force these people to watch and talk to me about. Yeah. Any final thoughts on Stephen King, Dr. Sleep, Ozzy the Cat?
God, I really loved it. It's one of the best times I've had with a new Stephen King book in a while.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. I loved it too, and I think it might be something that I could see myself revisiting down the line as like, okay, I'm going to have this playing in the background on Audible.
Gotcha.
So having said all that, that's it for this episode of Tower Junkies. Of course, check out patreon.com/obsessiveviewer for additional content recorded specifically for Patreon supporters. Forgot to mention that at the top of the show. We talked ad nauseum about my experience watching Onward in the theater with a special companion, which was a pile of vomit. So check that out, patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Minimum rate or minimum donation of $1 per month will get you access to an RSS feed with plenty of nonsense like that. So check that out, patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. That's it for this episode of Tower Junkies. Thank you guys so much for listening. Long days and pleasant nights.
And may you have twice the number.
And now, here's a short clip from our Patreon exclusive RSS feed. To hear the full clip and more exclusive Patreon content, go to patreon.com/obsessiveviewer and become a patron at the minimum rate of $1 per month. Thank you and enjoy.
Yep.
I went to Target with Ashley today because she is officially 8 months pregnant. Mm-hmm. Her baby shower is Saturday, and she commented on someone walking out of Target with a diaper genie.
Okay.
And so I was like, I don't understand diaper genies. Granted, I don't have kids. I don't plan on having kids or anything.
Yeah, I don't know what that is either. I don't know what a diaper genie is.
Oh, yeah. Well, see, this is going to ruin the joke then. Because I was just like, what is the point of getting a diaper genie? Because you only get 3 wishes, and it can only grant wishes about diapers. So it's buying 3 diapers. Just buy bulk. Everything. But no, a diaper genie is to dispose of used diapers.
Oh, it's like that special trash can?
Yeah.
I've seen that. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And then I asked her if an adult were to eat baby food, would they turn into a baby? And follow-up question, if a baby ate adult food, would they then turn into an adult? Yes. Which, the answer to the first question, obviously, is probably not. And the answer to the second question is eventually.
Is it true that if you don't use it, you lose it? Is that a serious question? No.
Tower Junkies is edited and produced by Matt Hurt and presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. For a full archive of our episodes, go to towerjunkiespod.com/archive. You can also like our Facebook page at facebook.com/towerjunkiespod and follow us on Twitter at towerjunkiespod. If you enjoy the show, please take a couple minutes to leave us a rating and a quick review on Apple Podcasts. This is the easiest way to support what we do, and all it costs is just a little bit of your time. If you'd like to donate to the podcast, you can make a PayPal donation at towerjunkiespod.com/donate or support us on Patreon for recurring donations and access to commentary tracks and B-roll audio recorded exclusively for patrons at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Every donation goes toward paying the fees to keep the podcast running and is greatly appreciated. For official Obsessive Viewer merch, including shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more, visit our TeePublic store. You can find a link to the store in the show notes of this episode and at obsessiveviewer.com/donate. Or you can simply search for Obsessive Viewer at teepublic.com. For information about our annual live event showcasing short horror films from local filmmakers, check out shocktoberinirvington.com. And for an archive of all our events, as well as news about potential future events, head over to obsessiveviewer.com/live. For more podcast content, you can find our flagship movie and TV review and discussion show, The Obsessive Viewer Podcast, at obsessiveviewer.com and on Twitter at obsessiveviewer. You can also find Anthology, Matt's solo podcast covering the Twilight Zone, and other classic and contemporary science fiction anthology TV shows at anthologypod.com and OV Anthology Pod on Twitter. And finally, check out The Secular Perspective, Tiny's side project podcast, which tackles current events and life's big questions from the perspective of secular hosts Chad and Amanda at thesecularperspective.com. Music for the podcast is provided with permission from Fingers T on YouTube. Additional bumper music is provided courtesy of As Good As It Gets, which can be found at facebook.com/asgoodasitgetsband. Thank you so much for listening. Long days and pleasant nights.